The topic which we are discussing today is a bit different because in the entire TS formation paper, we are discussing every topic concerned with Telangana, whether geographically, politically, or socially, economically. But today's topic, that is the liberalization and privatization in 1990s and consequences, is a bit different one. How it is different? Because liberalization is not a regional phenomenon, or globalization is not a regional phenomenon. We would like to discuss things with the global perspective, how the things are unveiling at the global level, and what is the impact of those things in India, and who are the agents, who are the people who are bringing in reforms in India, then what is the impact on United Andhra Pradesh, in which Telangana is part. So, this liberalization, privatization and globalization, in short we call it as LPG. Don't think that it is liquefied pressure gas. This is liberalization, privatization and globalization. This LPG is very, very important phenomena in the context of Indian economy, because whatever we are discussing today, like in history, we have some cut points. For example, pre-independence or post-independence. On the same way, in the same way, or you can understand, we discuss things pre-globalization, post-globalization. Pre-globalization era or post-globalization era means what? The entire economic structure, economic scenario, economic aspect of this country is changing post-globalization. And we would like to see today what is the impact on Telangana. So, the topics we are going to discuss under this is the emergence of regional disparities and imbalances in political power, administration, education, employment, agrarian crisis and decline of handicrafts in Telangana, and its impact on Telangana society and economy. Imbalances in political power or administration and all these things, though we are discussing the topics like this, we'll be going in depth about all these topics, like we'll be talking about the sectors, how the reforms are taking place. Before talking about all these things, I would like to explain the conceptual aspects of this one. So, what is globalization? Globalization, as we understand, global means the world. Globalization is nothing but it's a crisis management to retrieve the economies of the developed countries. See, in history or philosophy, to which sort of historical school you belong to, you can use such words. For example, some of the historians, some of the people who write history say crisis management to retrieve the economies of the developed countries. Instead, they say economies of the imperialist countries or economies of the first world, means all advanced countries, economically developed. So, these countries were undergoing a severe depression. They were into crisis, one crisis to other. It was the regular chain happening the world over. If we look at the phenomena of globalization or global economy, generally what we feel that it is expanding. People think that economy is expanding, you are opening new markets and everything. Post World War, there is no war because the crisis is over, only trade is happening. This is a false notion majority have. Now, if we see post World War scenario, there was a boom. Boom means because to rebuild the economies of the countries which suffered heavy losses in the World War, the restructuring was happening, that rebuilding was happening, and it helped to what you call lift the economic condition of US like countries. So global boom was there. It was a boom. Post World War boom was there. But afterwards, you have a recurring shocks, recurring nosedives, recurring problems in the global economy. Why do I say recurring? Recurring means the crisis will happen again and again. After one crisis, you will see another crisis, because capitalism binds the whole world into one chain or into one unit. When the capitalism binds the whole world into one unit, what will happen? Any crisis happening in any part of the world, in the developed area or developed country or first world country or imperialist country, that will impact the economy of the other region too. This is the general principle. In this aspect, if we see post World War, after a brief boom, the oil shock of 1973, shock. Oil shock means there is a big, I'm not going in detailed aspects about all these things because it takes a lot of time. Just remember all these things and you can just name it and say that this is the reasons of the globalization. Then collapse of Bretton Woods agreement on fixed rates. See, we had different practices. Bretton Woods agreement is there and World Bank is there, IMF is there. All these are international institutions or agreements. TRIMS, you might have studied in economy or international relations, TRIPS and TRIMS. All these things were there which are related to the economy, trade and global markets. So, next, 1980-81 there was a crisis. Then again within 10 years, 91-92 there was a crisis. Then we see a huge change in the entire political scenario of the world with the fall of USSR, disintegration of USSR. Once USSR got disintegrated, the whole world economy is restructuring again. So, politically there is a big fallout. Militarily there is a big fallout, like we don't have Warsaw Pact after this. And in this continuation, you can see the whole crisis is again recurring. Next, Southeast Asia crisis. There was a huge crisis in economies. On one good morning, a bank will go bankrupt completely. A country's economy will nosedive. In Latin America, devaluation was at a higher stage. Inflation was too high. All these things were happening in spite of we feel that there is no war and the global economy is fine. World Bank like organizations, IMF like organizations were bringing out many reforms time and again to make these things settled. Means to come out of crisis, but they couldn't succeed. In countries, many countries in Latin America, they have brought out some reforms like Structural Adjustment Program. They call it as SAP, SAP. This Structural Adjustment Program could not succeed and you had its fallout in many Latin American countries with highest rates of inflation and economies were nosediving. So these are the crises. So this continuous crisis should be stopped. So IMF, World Bank or Bretton Woods or all these things are finally coming on to WTO. I am talking about WTO, World Trade Organization. Before World Trade Organization, there was a huge effort or talks, deliberation between the countries to make WTO possible. And all these things in the direction of globalization. Before WTO, there was Dunkel draft. Based on this, again, WTO was being formed. Doha talks. Doha, there were talks on this WTO formation. So all these things are happening in the global scenario. So globalization is not a simple phenomena. It is an effort. It is nothing new. Capitalism's last phase, this is recent phase, is globalization. They are trying to, through World Trade Organization, or the instruments coming through WTO, what they are trying to do is to force open the markets of the world, all the sectors of the world to capital, so that there will be no restrictions of capital, for capital to enter into any nook and corner of the earth. That is basically globalization. It will help some countries, it will destroy some countries. Who will get helped? Who will get boosted? Who will be destroyed? It all depends on the political nature of the state and strength of the economy of the country. So this is globalization. After globalization, I have explained globalization at length because you will have a question in social issues also. What is the impact of globalization on so and so sector? Impact of globalization on industry. In one of the civil services examination, general studies, they have asked what is the impact of globalization on women? So understand globalization and apply the phenomena in Indian context. So next, what is liberalization? Liberalization in the word itself is liberal, means no restrictions. Abolition of restrictions on commodities or services, TRIPS and all those things I talked about, between different trading nations or countries. This is liberalization. Means there will not be any serious restrictions for many of the trading countries, participating countries of WTO on trade. So market will be forced open for all the countries, trading countries. with all restrictions. Of course, all the all said and done, this is laissez-faire, means free trade practice, is always having bias towards the imperialism, whether it is the capitalism of mercantile capitalism type, or in the latter capitalist industrial capitalism, or last phase of capitalism, which is many of the scholars call it as imperialism. So always, though you say that it is free trade or fair opportunity, it is never fair, or it is biased towards one or some of the group of the countries who are strong economically. So abolition of restrictions is the essence. Deregulation of the industry, end of the license Raj, all these things we were talking about. What do you mean by deregulation? There will be no rules. Means you can have your say when you are coming with an what you call your industry, and there will not be many checks from the government side. Means licensing, there used to be some 10 or 15 licenses, labor license, professional medical license, sanitary license, or trading license, or municipal license. All these licenses will go at one way. That license Raj they used to call, means if you want to start an industry, you have to undergo the pain of going and applying for all the licenses, and you are not inviting the investment or capital easily. Means they have to work on different things before investing. So by ending this, you can invite many investments. This is another understanding of liberalization. So all these things are being done under the guidance of the world economic institutions, global economic institutions like IMF and World Bank. So the essence of this is capital centric growth. Means growth, you always see the growth rate. Growth rate, whose growth rate it is? Is it the growth rate of the country where you can see the people or the downtrodden or the middle sections, or you will see put together growth rate in lump sum or in aggregate and say that we are growing. Always these rates and statistics speak only partial truth. So this capital centric growth is not human centric growth. It is capital. How much capital you are investing, how much market you could open, how much profits you reap. This is the only concern. It will not see how many people are being benefited out of these reforms, how much employment you are going to create. Though all these institutions, all these new liberalized economies are the institutions which are coming in a liberalized economy, they speak that we give so much of employment. That is not the centric one, because this is capital centric. You should reap more benefits. So this is liberalization. Then last one is privatization. What do you mean by privatization? As the globalization is the political aspect and economic aspect of the whole character, means it is the character of this economy. Then liberalization is the modus. A liberalization is a partial modus, means you are changing your psychology to liberalize your tools. And privatization is modus operandi, means how do you implement this globalization or liberalization? That is privatization. Opening of public sector to private players. Today you can see even defense sector, 49% or greater share is going towards private people in many of the core sectors too. So why should you be with all these sectors? Let the private people run. Let the private people run, let them get profit and share the profits with the state. This is what the understanding of this privatization. Gradual withdrawal of states' investments or states' responsibility from public sector is being done. For example, Modern Bread was a company in Hyderabad that was a public sector unit. Why a state government should spend its time in preparing Modern Bread? Let it be done by the private sector. This is what they said. It is a trading activity. Let the private people do and get the benefits. State has something else. This is what they were talking about. So, gradual withdrawal from the public sector. Then disinvestment in PSUs, public sector units. See, public sector unit has a basic principle, that is service to the people. Public sector unit has an aim. When you are starting a public sector unit, it should have people's orientation, growth of the country and nation. Once the private institution is coming, there is no such morals or aims. If they say that our GDP is growing, it's together because we are doing it in this country, you can see the GDP. But it does not mean that this is a real growth related to the country. So disinvestment in PSU is happening. in the name of losses, in the name of why we should have this responsibility, in the name of growth of private sector, which is more competent than our public sector. So likewise, the disinvestment in PSUs is happening. Many of the companies were thrown with just for pittance, less money. The assets of the company itself is much more than the real value which the private investor is paying to the state. So this is disinvestment. Then in this aspect, more role will be there for the foreign capital, FDIs, foreign direct investments and portfolios, all these things. You can get investments from foreign directly in this privatization. This is nothing but market-oriented economy. Market-oriented economy means it all depends on the demand. It all depends on the production is all dependent on demand. Even at times, the need is also being produced by the producer. For example, we don't need many of the cell phones, but you have hundreds of shopping malls or shops or dozens of cell phone companies trying to sell you a cell phone, which is not a basic necessity. But they create an artificial, demand also for the commodity. So this is market oriented. It is not just need, but it is the innovation and need of the companies or the private sector to reap benefits. So this is market oriented economy. Even in service sector, you can see the change. Then ultimately, all these things are leading to one thing, that is anti-people or anti-labor policies. Why we are talking about people when we are talking about investment, capital or industry, whatever it is. If people are not there, this investment will not be active. It will be a dead investment. It cannot be called as investment. It lies there like some treasure. That's it. Any investment should reap surplus. It should be invested, reinvested. Any surplus should be reinvested. Investment should be there. This is a capitalist mode. So anti-labor and anti-employee policies, because the question or the concern is the profit. If the institution or the industry is not getting enough profits because of more number of people will be sacked mercilessly. So thus this privatization is happening. So because of this, what was happening, that LPG, liberalization, privatization and globalization was led by, as I said, this is all international global institutions like World Bank, WTO, IMF, all these people. And the basic change in this period you can see is, previously, before the globalization, set of globalization or the pre-globalization era, states in the country cannot interact or directly take loans from World Bank, or they need not interact. Even World Bank need not interact with the states. It's the center's responsibility or it's right to interact with the foreign or international institutions. But now in this period, you can see World Bank directly coming and making agreements with the state governments for giving loans and restructuring the state's economies. So direct influence of World Bank into the state, into the sovereignty of this country is happening because of this. Another important aspect, another phenomena happening is growth of service sector, decline of industrial sector. There is much benefit or much profit in service sector. You can see today, what is the most advanced industry in Hyderabad is the IT sector. What is industry actually? Do they produce any product? No, everything is virtual. But we had great industrial units like Sanat Nagar, Alvin Industries or Azamabad. We used to produce. Once in 1980s, we used to have manufacturing as one of the major imports to some other countries. BHL-like institutions were there which were doing it. So this growth sector and service sector, if you counterpose growth sector, service sector is growing, manufacturing sector is nosediving or in decline. So at the same time, another sector which is getting neglected is agriculture sector. For service sector, you have all the priorities. I'll talk about it when the state's response will be discussing. But for agriculture, subsidies, every day, whatever subsidy you give, we say that is a free lunch. As if it is the peasants who are at the mercy of the people or the government, and the rest of the people who are not agriculturists are showing some mercy on the agriculturists by giving subsidies. That is why Agriculture sector was also a big sufferer in this period. So welfare schemes, measures, all these things gone. The concept which I said, no free lunches, this was a popular idiom during this period. No free lunch means no subsidy, no special treatment for anyone. Everyone should compete and prove your competence. That is globalization. That is capital. This is the character of the period, what is happening. So, whenever we see new word, new economic policy, new agriculture policy and all these things. And first, when we talk about Telangana, we see Chandrababu Naidu's regime as the period of reforms. But it is not Chandrababu Naidu who has brought in the reforms into this country. Though Chandrababu Naidu claimed that all the world leaders are happy with me and they listen to my voice and they take me as a role model in countries like India. And unfortunately for Chandrababu Naidu's argument, it is P.V. Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh combined which team assured or brought in the reforms into India. That is, economic reforms of 1990s is very crucial. After this, the whole scenario in the economy or economic sector has changed. So, new industrial policy is coming in 1991, that is relaxing the licensing procedure, global linking of global capital with Indian capital, then to achieve production levels, becoming competent level, and permanence in employment. They are saying, though they said permanence in employment, actually what has happened in the process is non-permanence of employment. So, reduction of losses in PSUs, all these things are part of new industrial policy. This new industrial policy has brought in some of the important aspects, that is how the industry should function, how the industry should be run by the government. That is, as part of privatization, things are happening. And next is new economic policy of 1991. Manmohan Singh was the finance minister. P.V. Narasimha Rao was the prime minister. So Manmohan Singh as finance minister has brought in many reforms. When Manmohan Singh was becoming the prime minister, in the beginning days, within months or days, everyone was talking about one thing, that is, see the greatness. An economist is heading the department today. That economy or finance or our economy will be in the hands of an able man who is none other than a professor who teaches economics in D school, that is Delhi School of Economics, Manmohan Singh. So Manmohan Singh as finance minister, and we had new economic policy. This new economic policy has really brought in many important changes in the entire country. So, neglect and decrease of number of PSU. Neglect means the investments which are needed will not be given to the PSUs. Neglect, they will be completely neglected, they will not be given any of the subsidies, or they will be completely ignored. They will not touch it, they will be, that will be left to its natural death. This is about the public sector. This is part of your economic policy. Withdrawing the state's role in many sectors and bringing in private parties or private players into all these sectors. That is the essence. So, this liberalization, privatization and globalization has spread to many fields, and especially in the field of education, healthcare and employment. Why? Education and healthcare. These two are very crucial departments. Education, you are investing on a generation or a succeeding generations together always. You can make your impact through education on a generation. And here, LPG, private people are entering into education, and now education is completely being privatized. Then, employment, no guarantee to your employment during this liberalization or globalization. You have to compete. Till the second you compete, you will be there, otherwise you will be thrown out. That is why we have many concepts of employment coming in this period. That is contract. Second one is Second one is contractual labor. Second one is outsourcing. Third one is like use and throw, hire and fire. All these words are coming in this phase. So this phase is very important in the Indian context. Here, speedy implementation is very important. Central government under P.V. Narasimha Rao was for speedy implementation. But many of the states are not ready to implement these reforms. When we say economic reforms, when we say this globalization, at the outset, when we see globalization, it looks something very beautiful. Means everywhere the capital can go, everywhere you can provide an opportunity for employment and all these things. But in reality, what will happen? You will see in the next unfolding minutes. So here, only few states were responding. And it's not the question of response also. Some of the states having some advantages got or caught hold of the opportunity of this globalization. For example, AP is one. The other one is Haryana-like places where Gurgaon-like areas are the now hubs of these economic reforms. Then Bangalore-like cities. Show me in the entire country how you have so many cities, but these three places are the showcasing models or showcasing things for globalization. So, in this background, Andhra Pradesh, United Andhra Pradesh, has become an experimental ground for World Bank. Why they have chosen Andhra Pradesh? Why not some other state? There are two reasons. Though I am not giving in this PPT, I have read about these things. Why World Bank is serious about Andhra Pradesh? It's because Andhra Pradesh has different characters. One is left-wing extremism or Naxalites are there. Second thing is a big political class is there which will support World Bank. So these two contradicting things are there in Andhra Pradesh. In this background, what has happened? The World Bank policies reached Hyderabad or Andhra Pradesh, and Chandrababu Naidu was the person who was eager to implement these things. That is why whenever he says, if we listen to his speeches of those times, he preferred to be called as CEO of Andhra Pradesh than CM of Andhra Pradesh. CEO is a corporate terminology. When you are using corporate terminology, it is to show that I am strict in implementing the World Bank reforms. That is what Chandrababu Naidu did. He sent signals by saying such things. And P.V. Narasimha Rao, Manmohan duos initiated reforms. In their period, definitely, since they are unleashing or unfolding or introducing, they will be promoting it. But on the other hand, after P.V. Narasimha Rao regime, what is happening? It's a coalition. Coalition politics is the main character of this period. Starting from 1990s onwards till date, you can see 1980s till date. This coalition politics is also very important at the central level. So coalition politics is another factor which helped for this LPG becoming implemented or LPG being implemented in Telangana or other parts of the country. So what Chandrababu did was, he brought in an USA agency, that is McKinsey company, to prepare a draft to change or to enter into the new era of globalization, that is McKinsey and company. It's a private company. You see, the fate of the people is being put in the hands of a private capitalist company that is US based by the elected leader. Don't you see a serious problem in our democracy in that way? So a foreign company dictating terms of your growth, of the model of your growth. So this is the bad thing. So McKinsey company brought out a document known as Vision 2020, and January 1998, he declared that implementation of Vision 2020 will happen. 2020 means till 2020. So to implement this, Chandrababu Naidu has created 14 task forces. Thus, now the ball is on roll. The chariot is on roll. That is globalization, privatization and liberalization are happening in Telangana. Till now, we have discussed the conceptual aspects of globalization, liberalization and privatization, plus how they are getting unveiled, or what are the beginnings in the Indian context? How the central government is helping the globalization to get unveiled in this country. So now, after that, we have discussed a bit about how Chandrababu Naidu in United Andhra Pradesh was willingly, very ambitiously, or very enthusiastically implemented all the reforms in Andhra Pradesh, thus affecting Telangana too. So now, what are the things happening under this LPG? Like AP Economic Restructuring Project. Remember this word, APARP. This APARP is nothing but this is a concise project under which the reforms are being taken place. Reforms, I am talking about reform. Reform, when you hear a word reform, like social reform, it sounds good. But when it is economic reform, it sounds good for some people, sounds bad for some people. Bad for the sufferers, victims, or the people who are at the receiving end of these economic reforms. Reform is a word with both connotations. Economic reforms in most cases we see are happening at the cost of the people. AP Economic Restructuring Project is the project unveiled by the state government. That is, project cost is around 3,300 crores as the basic cost. Later, lots of crores of money is being pumped into the state by the World Bank as loan. We are into debt rat, we will discuss it later. But World Bank share is 2,200 crores in this 3,300 crores. And this share, 2,200 crores will be given by World Bank, rest should be supplemented by central and state government. This is the basic thing. The period they are starting is this, the conditions should be fulfilled which are laid by World Bank. Then only we can have this thing. That is, the period which we are talking is 1999 to 2004 is the major period of APERP, restructuring project. So, under APERP, there are 6 sectors which are being reformed. One is district primary education. Second is primary health. Third is integrated child development. Fourth, rural roads upgrading and maintenance. Fifth, irrigation rehabilitation. Sixth, public enterprise reforms. You see, district primary education, it is not education as a whole. They are focusing on primary education, not even secondary education. Basic thing is primary education, under which you can see the growth of many. During this reform period only, we have got this Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, that is World Bank project actually. So, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan is presently Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. They have changed the name. Previously, there used to be Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, RMSA. Now, both are merged and it is Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. Remember this for your competitive examinations. So, reforms under district education, it is aimed at primary education. Why primary education? We will talk in detail when I am talking about the changes happening in education sector. Then health. So, all these things we can see, these are the core sectors. So, what was the effects of conditions on World Bank on AP? What are the things? See, 1990-95, these are the statistics. Remember, whatever you can remember, you should remember for your mains. Between 1990-1995, the burden of interest on state's domestic product was 12.1%. Means 12.1% was the share for loans. Interest for loans. You have to pay 12.1%. But between 1995 and 2000, it has increased to 16.9% you are paying for interest. Debt to any international institution is very bad for many countries. See, what will happen, once you are into the debt trap, you are forced to take loans to pay the interest too. Like any landlord and the bonded labor. This is a tragedy. But many countries are into debt trap because of these things during this period, structural reforms period or World Bank period. So, in 1998, the total unemployed were 31 lakhs in the state, and deficit rose from 3.2 to 5.5 deficit, budget deficit. You can see what these restructuring programs are telling. We are going to reform your economy, but instead you can see that is a reversal of the economy. Deficit is rising, interests are rising, and unemployment is on rise. And who is gaining in this? Loan component, if you see, 1990-91, the loan component was 48 crores. 93-94, it is 626. 96-97, it is 936. This is 97, it is 936. Come to modern period, most of the states have thousands of crores or sometimes lakhs of crores as loans. Piling up of loans because of the World Bank policies, you can see. So, the first thing the globalization or these reforms are doing is, they are trying to reform the sectors by completely restructuring the sector. Means they want to bring in the whole change in the structure. So, they are appointing committees to look into the changes, to suggest the changes. So, in that sector, first one is power. World Bank has attached utmost important in power structure. Why? Because power is a consumable good. If you consume 1 unit of power, you have to regenerate. You can't save it or you can't recycle it. Power is always a growing sector. There is huge money in power sector. That is why World Bank has focused on power sector, and one committee was appointed in Andhra Pradesh, that is Hiten Bhaya Committee. Hiten Bhaya, it is not Hiten Bhaiya. Many books are writing Hiten Bhaiya Committee. It is not Hiten Bhaiya, it is Hiten Bhaya Committee. Hiten Bhaya Committee has suggested reforms. It gave the report in June 1995. The suggested reforms, like the tariff should be fixed to cover the production. Means how much is being spent for the production should be paid. Means what? Those who cannot pay cannot buy the tariff. Means no subsidies. Who will be at loss? The poor will be at loss. So this is a broad understanding. Subsidies will come during the elections, it's a different story. And again that will be sacked, it's a different story. But here the production and tariff should be in consonance. They should be same. Means if you can pay, you get power. That's what I said before. No free lunch, no subsidy. That will happen. Separate generation and transmission distribution agencies. Before this it was APSEB, AP State Electricity Board. Now APSEB will be a regulatory body like thing to all these things. But they wanted this generation, transmission, distribution. That is why you see you have Genco, Transco. So like that, the whole power sector wanted to be revamped. Under this, different companies will come, and these things will be privatized ultimately. Privatization of power should be done or can be done only through dividing the power department into different branches. Once you give the companies to different agencies, means smaller agencies in different areas, and that can be easily taken over by private sector. This is the one thing. Then a regulatory commission to fix tariff. World Bank is suggesting this because power structure, power tariff, all these things are political issues also, because during election period people will be at the bargaining position, and the ruling classes or the governments will be say, okay, we will not hike. But after that you will have all these things. So here, despite of whatever the political need or necessity or happenings are, the power tariff should be there. So that is why regulatory commission should be constituted. This was the one. Then World Bank gave $4,460 million as loan, and as a result this AP Electricity Reforms Act was enacted in 1998 by Assembly, and because of that an electricity regulatory commission came up. This regulatory commission will regulate the whole thing. Restructuring of electricity industry was done. Rationalization of generation, transmission, distribution has done, and participation of private sector is being facilitated. By this, you can purchase from private players to according to your convenience. So we have Transcos and Gencos, different areas you have. But what was the fall of this? All these things. People were protesting against these reforms, power reforms. So this power tariff hike was being protested by the people. Especially left parties took out a big procession against this power hike, and there was a tragic incident, means firing at Bashir Bagh. Bashir Bagh firing on 28th August 2000, in which a few people were killed. There are different stories about the number. Some people, our government says it is 2 and the agitators say it is 6. So forget about the numbers. But Bashir Bagh firing, people were killed, many wounded in Bashir Bagh firing because they were coming to assembly to protest against the power tariff hike. So this is the law and order issue, not just law and order, it is an attack on the rights of the people to protest. So Bashir Bagh firing in 2000 definitely had its toll or had impact on the next coming elections in 2004. Chandrababu was infamous because of this Bashir Bagh firing too. And these reforms, power reforms, impacted welfare schemes, subsidies. And who is at the receiving end? Small sector, medium sector, and the agriculture sector. So DISCOMs came, thus power sector is completely changing its previous form. Then comes Gangopadhyay Committee. The government always feels that the budget, major component of budget is spent on the salaries, pensions. So World Bank is giving some suggestions to restructure the whole administrative aspects of your salaries or personnel. So they have appointed a committee known as Gangopadhyay Committee to review or assess the available positions in the government, identify redundant staff, means extra staff, they can be removed, and recommend for redeployment. This can be removed and they can be redeployed somewhere else. This is about the employees, present employees. And about the job recruitment, they say no recruitment should be done without permission. There should be some permissions and there should be some rationale for recruitment. You can't do easily. Means don't take many of the employees into the state. That is what they are saying. If you take many employees, you have to pay salaries and pensions too. So that is why pensions, a basic right of the human being, after so many years of work, they should live peacefully in their old age. But now pension scheme has gone. They came up with some alternative. This is part of your economic restructuring or World Bank reforms. So another suggestion of this Gangopadhyay Committee was reduction of number of employees by 0.9% every year from 1996-97 to the till the end of the 9th plan. Means every year you should reduce 1% of the employees in your total strength. How do you do? Take many methods like voluntary retirement. Voluntary retirement is a very interesting thing. Voluntary means actually it's forced voluntary because you have to restructure. You are giving some incentives, enticing them to take retirement. You called it as, these people called it as golden handshake. That is VRS scheme, golden handshake. Means you will be paid lump sum amount if you go for VRS. You need not pay much bigger component of salary. Instead, you will pay at once. So that is what this Gangopadhyay Committee was telling. And employment growth rate, you can see before 1996-97 it was 3.4 and after 96-97 it is less than 1%. It means definitely they have achieved what they wanted, means less number of jobs, less number of recruitment. So no new recruitment. Where are the recruitment is being done? You can see since then the phenomena is there are only 2 or 3 sectors where the recruitment is being done. One is police. State needs police always because you need more and more police to maintain law and order and to curb dissent too, or to show that the state is strong. So one is police recruitment. Second is primary education. This is funded by World Bank. Then medical. This is also partly funded by, many schemes are funded by these World Bank and other institutions. So primary education and medical, this is, you have regular recruitment. That is why teacher recruitment and police recruitment, these 2 things are there always. Whether you have group 1, 2 or other recruitment, doesn't matter. So it is reducing the scope of number of people getting into the state government. So salaries component, if you can see, 2000 to 2001 it was 68.17. Now by 2002, 2003 it has come down by 6%. 6% is not a small number. It's a huge difference. Thus, the Gangopadhyay Committee recommendations are focusing on the service conditions, employment, pension and the life of the employees. And now you can see the fallout in different ways. So, next committee is Koneru Ramakrishna Rao Committee, Koneru Ramakrishna Rao Committee on Higher Education. Koneru Ramakrishna Rao is philosophy professor, he was occupying many other things, and this man has suggested reforms in higher education to serve globalization. That is why post 1990s, you have a monolithic structure in education. Every person will be writing MSET and either doctor or engineer. Do you have any other subject because of this? This is known as monolithic. This is known as monoculture. You grow one cotton, you grow only one commercial crop because they are commercial crops. You study only one course because that yields or that gives you more salary. You lost the diversity in education because of this committee. We can see in every place, you see almost every second or third person is a BTech in Andhra Pradesh or Telangana. Why? Everyone is a BTech without having a technical understanding or knowledge, and no one is becoming a technocrat and going into service sector as telecallers or small people who are into the whole chain of system in capitalism. And no one is becoming a technocrat, and BTech has become a simple degree. This is the symptom of this higher education committee's reforms. He said there is no need of the role of the state in higher education and private sector can handle it. When private sector can handle it, how the private sector will handle? It will handle through high prices. Means now you can buy education. You cannot choose what to study, but you can choose only if you have money. So higher education is the basic thing which has changed the understanding of society, because the grown-ups who are getting values or responsibility to the state is completely being privatized. So post-globalization or after these reforms, we can see a big change happening in the country. The entire generation, post-globalization generation, lost much of the social, ethical understanding which the pre-globalization generations had. Responsibility, understanding, and the ethical concern for many things. Now it is single personal centric. Profit, big salary, big package, and you live happily. And it is not the society. Education gives you morality. Education gives you concern for the society. And it is not simple getting the higher education or losing higher education. It is concerning the whole educational scenario with the society. So higher education reforms has ushered a very, very bad thing on the society, where the society is entering into a new phase where humans lost its touch as humans. That is why it is a conscious effort of globalization. Means any human should be an island. Physical island is okay. This is a psychological island. At cultural level, you should be an island. And if you are into privatization, education will lose all its ethical duty towards society. How much you pay, you get that. And you get huge perks or huge pay, you go and serve that institution. So, delinking of knowledge with education and making knowledge and education and salary linked. So the entire concept has changed with this. That is why we can see the market oriented education coming up in this period, and professional and applied courses get a boost. Market oriented education, pharmacy, tourism, and all these things. And Chandrababu, the biggest mascot of globalization, said, why you study history? Study economy or pharmacy or some job oriented course. Studying history is mere waste, he said. And as he is a mascot of this globalization, he said, even agriculture is damn waste. And these are the things, the conceptual difference between the real society or a welfare society and a society run by Chandrababu Naidu likes under globalization. You can see a change. Then Subramanian Committee on PSUs came in 1995. That is again on PSUs, public sector units. Public sector is a responsibility of the state to run some needed industries and give employment and make goods available for the people. Now, PSUs are under loss. Some PSUs are under loss. Now, this committee is suggesting some of the things. Don't waste public money on losing or loss-making PSUs. Handle it carefully restructure it or hand over it to the private people or close it. Why you waste money on this? This is number one. Revamping management means you revamp the management, get best management, restructure the whole structure, less money pump in as salaries, then financial discipline you should bring in, and rationalization of employees. Through that you can save. This is one recommendation of Subramanian Committee. And this privatization of PSUs or closure of PSUs is, on one side, if you see from economic angle, yes, it is true that we shouldn't waste money. But on the other angle, state, they left their responsibility in higher education. They left responsibility in industry. What responsibility does the state have? Is it just mere making laws or policing? Here, state is gradually leaving all the responsibilities to private people. This is one among them, that is PSUs. So, there are two stages. First stage was 1998 to 2001. Second stage, January 2002 to 2005. So, during this period, the impact of reforms on PSUs we can see in Andhra Pradesh. Since we are concerned with Telangana, all these things we are talking in terms of Telangana to Andhra Pradesh too. Whatever bad things are happening, like privatization of education, who are the sufferers? People of Andhra Pradesh is also sufferers because of Hyderabad centric development. We'll talk about it. So, impact of reforms on PSUs, if we see, total institutions in AP 123 were subjected to these reforms. 40 corporations, 73 cooperatives, federations, government shareholding companies, that is 10. So, out of the 5,242 crore paid up capital of the government, 2,150 crore rupees are lost. There are 3.5 lakh employees. Now, what you have to do with all these PSUs? You sell it or close it, or reduction of share or retrenchment. Thus, the PSUs are under fire now. We can see impact of reforms in PSUs. 13,321 people took VRS in the first phase, 21 in the second phase. Altogether, it is almost 50,000 we can see till some of the data is coming. We don't know exact, I don't remember, but almost at least 50,000 people got VRS. They are leaving the jobs by taking the voluntary retirement. Many important industries which were popular and serving the people and employment was given to the locals. Such industries, such institutions were closed, like Antargaon Cooperative Spinning Mill in Adlabad, Rajarajeshwara Cooperative Spinning Mill, Sirisila, Alvin Watches, it was a great industry from Hyderabad. Hyderabad Alvin is Nizam based industry, Nizam period they have started, and this Alvin Watches was sold to Titan. And many institutions were given to private, like Nizam Sugar Mills closed, 2-3 units were closed, Mumbojpalli closed, Jairabad closed, Miryalaguda closed, and Bodhan finally it is also going into red in the latter stage. This is the first phase I am talking about. Then Lidcap, this is Leather Development Corporation, is getting raw deal. Then AP Agros, AP Fisheries, AP APCO is textile, AP Weavers Cooperative. Everything is going into red and privatized or closed. So, what was the impact on rural Telangana? We can see impact on rural Telangana. When we see all these things are crucial things. When power is not there, you don't get electricity to lift water from the borewells. Already there is a crisis, huge crisis in irrigation in Telangana, as we have studied about the injustice done to Telangana because of water sharing in Godavari and Krishna. So, you don't have irrigation water and you have to lift water, and in many of the districts, you don't have power to lift water from the borewells. So, what happens? All the crops will die or dry down. So, power crisis, irrigation crisis, loss of crop, damage of motors because of fluctuating current, and rural Telangana was suffering a huge loss in this period. Already tanks are in very bad shape. Globalization is for boosting the economy in urban centric way. Rural economy you are completely neglecting. Tanks were very bad shape. There is a popular say like Gangala Laguna Cheruvulu తాంబాళాలు అయినాయి. గంగాళ మీన్స్ ఇట్స్ ఏ వెజల్ విత్ మచ్ డెప్త్. తాంబాళ మీన్స్ ఏ ఫ్లాట్ వన్. గంగాళాల్లాగా ఉన్న చెరువులు తాంబాళాలు అయినాయి. సో ఆల్ ద ట్యాంక్స్ గాట్ డ్రైవ్డ్ అప్ బికాస్ ది నెగ్లెక్టెడ్. యునైటెడ్ ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్, ఆంధ్ర రూలింగ్ క్లాస్ neglected all the tanks in Telangana. Minor irrigation was completely under neglect. Now Mission Kakatiya is solving that problem, that issue. So before that you had all these things. So power sector privatized, so no subsidies, our power is not correct. Finally what is happening? Rural sector, agriculture sector is at its receiving end. They are the victims. And another thing is commercialization of agriculture is also part of your globalization. Whatever pays, whatever gives you more money, you'll sow that. This commercialization is a big thing in Telangana. You see, cotton and some of the tobacco like things, all these are commercial crops. And cotton, many of the suicides in rural Telangana are happening because of cotton. Cotton farmers, why? You invest much. Because of the green revolution, you have all the bad effects of green revolution in India and even Telangana too. Now under globalization, all the odd circumstances, you are going for a commercial crop with huge investments, huge inputs, and finally if the crop is not giving you the desired amount as in return, and they are indebted in lakhs to the money lenders or landlords, and they are committing suicide. So what is happening under globalization? All the sectors are being privatized without having any concern for the people's welfare. So rural area, commercialization of crop, see, any imperialist platform or any globalization aspect is nothing but monolithic or monoculture. They grow only one thing to reap benefits. That is why, like cotton, it is our BTech students. You grow cotton, you make money. You study BTech, you get a USA trip. That is why lots of, how many go to US or how many settle in IT, but lot of BTechs are getting their certificates as just mere thing. So here, the rural sector is at loss. Artisans, rural professionals, means those who are doing all the low handicrafts or bamboo weaving or metal crafts, potters, everyone. You see, once the plastic has come in, potters lost their profession. Many of the people don't have pots in their home. Why? Because it is plastic or steel which has replaced potter. Bamboo weaving gone. Only during marriage you can see bamboo things. Apart from that, you don't have bamboo at home. So what is happening? Artisans, rural professions lost their livelihood during this period. And as we have seen the growing regional disparities, corporatization of health is happening. Corporatization of health, all the investors, Andhra investors coming from Nelluru or coastal region having opened their corporate hospitals in Hyderabad. Except one group, all the rest corporate hospitals are coastal investments. And corporatization of health is definitely detrimental for the poor people's health. They can't afford. So this is one. Second thing is education. We see the people who are studying in corporate schools. Narayana Sri Chaitanya parallel intermediate board. Lakhs of students study in this, and competitiveness lost the basic concept of education under corporatization. People, means the parents, also got completely influenced under this corporatization and globalization. And we can see the whole culture has changed into post-globalization culture, understanding, polity, society, the social fabric is completely changing. So, coming to the last point about the disparities, employment, by the time of the discussion, that is the globalization phase, 1990s, according to some estimates, at least 1 lakh Andhras are in Hyderabad or Telangana in the name of employment. So there were many committees talking about, many judgments talking about, Girglani committee came and it was not implemented. So what is happening? Telangana, on one side you are at the receiving end because of the globalization, on the other side the people who are not locals are occupying the jobs. So thus the entire situation in Telangana is worsening during globalization period. So how do you conclude about globalization or this privatization and liberalization period? See, welfare state to corporate friendly state. We don't have anything to talk about welfare of the people. Then rights like employment. Employment is a right. Job is my right. You can't talk now. The right of the employment is seized by the globalization or this period, and it is the right of the employer to hire and fire. To hire you through contract or hire you through some agency, outsourcing. They don't have any obligation to retain you. So, unemployment. And this is what you call insecurity in employment. And third one is they have destroyed the economic and social fabric of Telangana, both rural and urban. Economic we have discussed a lot. Social means economic aspects will have its bearing on the social and cultural life of the people. And our culture is mostly dominated by post-globalization imperialist culture. That is a tragedy. Means we are market oriented, our understanding is market oriented, our culture is market oriented. And this is one. Then service sector is prime and other sectors are gone. That is why if you see many people, when they say that we are into IT, they say it proudly. But when you are into agriculture, you can't say proudly. Who are you means I am in IT, they say proudly. Means service sector has become very important. And badly and very pathetic condition is service sector is dependent on the global economy. If a global burst is happening, this IT will burst. Once IT is burst, we will see a big crisis in the urban scenario too. So, dependent on the global economy, service sector is growing. Other sectors which are sustainable always, manufacturing, if manufacturing is growing, you will have great thing. If agriculture is growing, you will have good economy. But these sectors are not growing and service sector is growing. This is another malady or another symptom of this globalization aspect. And lastly, Hyderabad-centric development, that is becoming a big hindrance. See, everything is coming into Hyderabad. For Telangana, Hyderabad is the capital. For Andhra Pradesh, now it is the capital. So, Hyderabad-centric development, people for coastal Andhra are coming and staying into Hyderabad because it's a capital. You can't stop it. And it is their right to. But claiming Hyderabad as the right of Andhras also is very bad. And that is why Chandrababu Naidu, to conclude, because this globalization begins with Chandrababu Naidu, and to be concluded with Chandrababu Naidu, he says that I have developed Hyderabad. He is not saying that I have developed Telangana. He says I have built Hyderabad, as if he is the Qutub Shahi king. Except that high-tech city, rest of the Hyderabad is destroyed. We lost all the big industries, all the PSUs in Hyderabad. And Chandrababu says, I built Hyderabad. We can understand the statement. He says, I built Hyderabad. He should say, I built Telangana. Then we would have accepted it. It is Hyderabad means the development is Hyderabad-centric. And Hyderabad-centric development from the coastal capital or coastal political power and inviting the global money or investments at the cost of the development of Telangana and Telangana people is the result of globalization, liberalization and privatization of 1990s.